The Secret Service and the Homeland Security came up with, did a lot of research on preventing school violence. And one of the things that Michael mentioned to all the teachers is that it is very hard to measure prevention. If we had 0 incidences today, great, but we can't say that we saved several people tomorrow because of something we did today. We just can't measure that. But here's what they found. They found that students are most often motivated because of a grievance with another student. They're motivated to plan a school attack because of another student. We also know that students are best positioned to identify and report the behaviors of their classmates, and we've seen this across the district, which is great because they do report those things. But I also believe that educators have that same ability because they're with their kids on a daily basis. They see the changes and the subtle changes of those students' behaviors. The Secret Service also found that removing a student from the school does not eliminate the threat. And we saw that in Uvalde. A student was not enrolled at the school at the time, yet came back to the school and shot it up. Here's what we've also learned. The Secret Service cannot find a useful profile for any school shooter. There's just so diverse between the school shooters that there's no useful profile. But what they did come up with, and this is something that we use on a regular basis, is the 11 questions. They call it the 11 questions. We call it the behavioral threat assessment. That is something that Secret Service put out years ago that we go through to find red flags. It's questions that we can talk, we come around a table, ask these questions, and then everybody comes together, and if red flags start going up, then we start to go down that hole and try to figure out what we can do to do wraparound support, whatever we can to intervene. Some other staggering statistics is that 4 out of 5 shootings that they found, at least one person knew about it and did not report it. We saw that in the Uvalde case, where some people knew about it but did not report it. They found that 93% of school shooters planned the attack in advance. Give you an example, the basketball player, that was a gun that went off accidentally, part of the 7% that was not planned. We also know that the mass school shooters shared threatening or concerning images or messages before the attack. Most often they do that, which then goes back to somebody at least knows about it before it happens. And this one is a statistic that we know happens after the fact. 75%, more than 75%, raised concern from others prior to the attack. That tells us that people are very aware. But it also tells us that we can prevent targeted violence if we identify the warning signs, which we do, but then intervene. And that's the other key piece of it, is identifying and then intervening. We also know by looking at the reports that we have not seen a child die behind a locked door when they were out of sight. This one's a tough one, and we talk to the teachers about it, is that tell me a study, show me a situation where a student died behind a locked door. We haven't found it. There may be something out there, but until then, I stand by that. If they're out of sight and behind a locked door, we have not seen a death. So in the Uvalde shooting, the governor had a response, and he provided some direction and some guidance and some money to the states, agencies, and the local districts. $100.5 million went it out. This is what it went to. There's a couple other things it went to. As you can see, $7 million went to the Texas School Safety Center for on-site campus assessments and evaluations, and to evaluate the access control. Mr. Kallenbach is going to talk a little bit more specific about what that looks like, but $7 million is going to that, and we are in constant communication with our Region Center and Texas State on what that's going to look like. $17 million is going to go to purchase silent panic button alert technology. Those $17 million is a lot of money. You know that there are 1,100 plus districts in the state of Texas. If you divide that out, you have $15,000 equally divided to each district in the state for panic alerts. And as y'all know, it's very expensive to add those anything technology-wise into the schools. Our vestibules, when you get quotes and start talking to those door companies, it costs about $4,000 to put one of those little switches with the wiring into the vestibules per door. So we know that that money is great, and we can definitely use it, but there's still a long way to go. And I want to say I appreciate you guys helping us with those funds to do what we are doing and what we have been doing. The governor also said that we're going to do targeted summer audits, safety audits, and an external door safety audit before the school starts. We did 3 of them. We did 3 independent studies. We did principals. Principals went around every school, their school, and checked all the doors. Any doors that had an issue, checked them. Then we asked the maintenance team to go to all the doors in the school, and they checked them on it as an independent. But then we also hired out a third-party independent company to go check those doors as well. We felt it was very important that we had an independent look at those doors as well. Since this summer, and Mr. Kennedy can probably tell us more, but the last I heard, we fixed over 130 doors in the district. The other thing is that Mr. Kennedy and Mr. Kallenbach made some strategic decisions. One of those based on the Uvalde situation where there was a maintenance request in that door for that classroom because it was a broken lock or something to that effect, and it was never repaired. One of the things that they decided is that we have our maintenance requests, and in that maintenance request, if a door or a lock is mentioned in that maintenance request, it goes up to an emergency level, top of the list, get it done, get it taken care of. So it doesn't ever fall down below with my carpet splitting or something like that. Bad example, but it goes up there with broken pipe, electrical issues, things like that. So that's something that they did. They asked the safety and security committees to meet over the summer, and LEA stands for Local Education Agency. This is something that the district's been doing for several years in the past. We meet in the fall, we meet in the spring, and we meet over the summer. But this year, we had a special meeting in June where we invited and asked all of the local law enforcement, ASU, Goodfellow, SAPD, the fire department, the DPS, the sheriff's office, they all came together and we met as a district to discuss the governor's mandates and the governor's response to these situations and how we as a team can work together to support our kids in the schools. But you know, as Dr. Detloff said, Goodfellow also shares our kids with Starbase and how we can work together to make sure that they are safe on a continuous basis. We're to ensure that all campus staff were trained, including the substitutes, on our safety procedures. Our safety procedures are the standard response protocol. Hey, Michael, the standard response protocol has come out, and Mr. Kallenbach will pass around something for you that shows it, but we'll bring it up on a slide in just a second. But our standard response protocol is from the I Love You Guys Foundation. It's the terminology that we use to say hold, secure, lock down, evacuate, or shelter. All the districts, all the campuses in the district and very many districts in our community use this same protocol, which is great because it's the same communication with the local law enforcement if there was ever a situation. Schedule of all mandatory drills for the school year. Again, this is something that the district's been doing for years, so it was just a check. We've already have that planned out. We're ready to go. We were to ensure that all SSSP, or Safe and Supportive School Program teams, are threat assessment trained. This is the behavioral threat assessment, and thankfully, this Texas State School Safety Center put out virtual training starting in January. And our district, we jumped on it, and we had several principals get on the virtual training in the spring, well before the governor mandated all this. And so we were already ahead of the game in that, and we know that when the governor mandated it, it was filling up fast. One thing that we can tell you is that there's at least one administrator on every campus that is behaviorally threat assessment trained. By the end of the school year, we are asking, and we will have all administrators on all campuses be trained in this behavioral threat assessment. And last but not least, we were to review and update our access control procedures. That's part of our Raptor system. That's part of our enter and exit. That's part of all those things that we need to look at for access control, especially with the vestibules. So I'm going to bring up Mr. Henry, and he's going to talk a little bit about what we've done in the past as far as safety, what we're continuing to do, and what we're about to do.
Tonight I'm going to go over our 2019 Crux safety assessment. Just to refresh y'all's memory, back in 2017, that roughly around that time, we had Huckabee come in and do a facilities study, and out of that we had this Crux 2019 security assessment as well. They had a 3-year plan with several recommendations to make our schools safer. Some of the projects that we've already gone through since 2019, the first one was we updated all of our signage at our campuses. Went through and made sure that every building had a number on it or a letter on it to denote it. And then we also streamlined it to make them the same across the district so that as fire or police arrived to the buildings, they could tell where they were at. From that, we also updated all of our campus maps. We've got a unified campus map across the district where every map, no matter where you go into, they're very similar. They list where all of our AEDs are, our utility cutoffs, several other things that maintenance and the staff there in the campus use. We also updated and added lockdown buttons to all the front doors. That way that if there was an issue outside, they could hit one button and lock the front door without getting up. 2019, we added 1,042 new cameras to our campuses throughout the district. Since then, we've probably added a minimum, probably around another 150 cameras. And we've also set a standard of 5 megapixels for outside cameras and started to upgrade to analytic cameras as well. We then went on to fencing. Once we went through and anywhere where there was 4-foot fence, we eliminated the 4-foot and lifted it up to 6 foot. And then we closed up some of the gaps in the fencing so that people couldn't just walk in and out of the campuses. This is still an ongoing one that we continue as we find other areas of fencing that needs to be updated. We continue to do that. Vestibules were added in 2019 and 20. One of the biggest ones out of that was Lincoln. We added a large vestibule over there. We also added radios, handheld communication throughout the district with our maintenance and our campuses. We added 450 handheld digital radios and did away with our analog radios. That was such a good upgrade that the next year we turned around and did the exact same thing with our buses and upgraded all of our buses to digital so that they could get better communication throughout the town. Then in 2020, we turned around and added LED lights to all of our facilities. In doing this, we went through on all the exteriors and made sure that any dark spots, we had extra lighting added. Any broken lights were removed and replaced as well. Currently, our biggest project that we're working on is the door project that Jason mentioned. We're working with Crux on that. They're working with Asa Abaloy. They just finished up the last inspection of doors that Jason mentioned, and we're waiting for bid specs to come out from that. The last thing that we're working on is our next year's safety and security audit through the state, and that was put out for bid on Friday. So we should be opening that up in 2 weeks.
Okay, so we're going to talk just a minute about this threat assessment training that all of our administrators, one at each campus, has already got before the school year starts. So one administrator at every campus has had the training. And by the end of this year, every administrator, campus administrator, will have the full training. But what we want you to know is practically what happens in one of these. And it happens anytime there is a report made that is concerning at all. And it's very important to note that it's pretty much any report that we get that is a potential threat. We put through this process, and it's pretty extensive. It's a set of questions, and a committee comes together with district administrators, campus administrators, to ask the questions. And as the questions go along, depending on how they're answered, determines whether there is a final determination made about whether there is an actual threat posed to a campus or to the school district. And it can keep going through the questions, and it can end up with law enforcement involved to the point where law enforcement goes to the house of the individual. You can look at, I've seen them even look at social media of the person that's in question, and even to the point where they go to the house and look at the environment, look at access to weapons. It's pretty extensive. And it's very important to note that practically on our campuses, this process is done the exact same way through the protocol. So even if it's a report that is made, it doesn't initially seem like it's a major threat. We're going to go through the protocol anyway to ensure that there is not actually a threat. Just as an example, we had a student a couple of years ago who made a comment at lunch and was overheard by some other students. They brought it as a report. And we went through the protocol. It did end up with law enforcement being involved, asking some questions, questioning the family, talking about access to weapons, looking at the environment. Ultimately, in the end, it was determined that this person did not pose a threat to the district, was allowed to come back to school. There was a lot involved in that. But what came of it is incredibly positive. The student was going down a destructive path. And what happened out of that threat assessment was a full-on wraparound support that ended with outside counseling. The family was able to get counseling. There was a whole lot of support that came into it, to the point where the student was just a 180-degree turnaround based on the support that they received, that was initially started by some words that were said, and that triggered that threat assessment. So it's a very positive thing, and it's mandated now, and the training is mandated, but radically can change lives. And like Dr. Skelton said, it's impossible to measure what we're preventing. Okay, so you have in front of you, we gave you a copy of that's the parent handout that goes with the protocols for when we have an incident on campus or if we're doing a drill. Often we find with cell phones, parents know pretty quickly, and that's important. Several of our campuses have ways of communicating with the parents as soon as a drill happens to let them know that it's just a drill. But this way, they will have the actual terminology that we're using. So when we say we're in a particular drill or in a situation, they'll know what's going on. We believe it'll help in that communication with parents. I mean, it's, as you can imagine, it's very unsettling whenever you find out that a school is in lockdown or in a drill of some kind, not knowing whether it's something that is actual event or not. So we'll continue to use this protocol. We have now been, after several days, we've been and talked to every campus. So they're all hearing the protocols, the same messaging about how we're going to do things when it comes to this. I imagine that you've heard somewhat about Care Solace or approved the partnership with Care Solace, but what's very important to know is that while we're putting all this effort into the physical safety of all of our people, there's also a matched effort on the mental health side. And we believe that that's very important. Care Solace is the partnership that we have with the district now that connects our people, students, their families, our staff, their families, to care providers with mental health. As you know, if you've ever had to do anything where there's all this red tape and it's confusing and it's complicated, we found that often people will just give up on the process and not follow through just because of how complicated it is to get connected, whether it's insurance or in the zone or not in the zone. There's so much about it that's complicated that Care Solace takes care of all of that, connects people with the care providers, and then tracks to make sure that they're still connected. It's a really powerful partnership, but it's important to know that we care as much about that, and we want to focus on that just as much as we do on keeping the physical safety of our people in our buildings. We'll continue to use the StayALERT. We've been using it for several years. It's a way to report anonymously. We don't get the majority of the reports that come in through this system, but we do get some, and those come immediately to district administrators, and we're able to connect with the campus people that are involved to help whoever it is that is in need. But it is an anonymous way to report. The vast majority of our reports that we get come through either students or staff. Students talk to staff, and then they talk to counselors and principals, and it goes that route. But we do still have this, and we still it's very important to have. So we'll continue to use that. I did want to say one thing about the audit that is mandated by the state, by the governor in terms of checking our campuses. So one of the things that we're very concerned about is putting some systems in place to protect against, as we get farther away from an incident like Uvalde, it's very easy to get more comfortable and to relax a little bit on some of the protocols that we have in place. And so what we're trying to do is to put some systems that are not human in place to keep checking on the things that we're doing. So as an example, the doors in our district, we will be all of our classroom doors will be locked at all times, and the exterior doors of our buildings that open directly to the public, that the public has access to, just basically from the street, those are mandated by the governor to be locked at all times. It's challenging logistically to do this, but it's safer to have all of the doors locked so that they automatically lock when you close them without having anything propped up in between them. So we've already talked to all of the teachers, all the staff on systems for that. But just as an example of some of the systems we're putting in place, we will have a code on the door, on every door, as we, as district administrators, as our SROs check those doors to report, they will log that they've been checked. And so one of the systems we'll do is we're setting up those forms that we get to alert us when a door hasn't been checked in a long time. Just an example of how we want to stay up on it, where it's something is alerting us rather than us having to remember. Because what we all know, the farther we get away from an incident, the more comfortable we'll be. And so we need to put some systems in place that'll keep that from happening. I have to commend, our district and our board for the work that you started a long time ago. We've met with law enforcement several times over the last few weeks, and we've gotten a lot of positive feedback on the efforts that our district has made, that we're a little ahead of the game in a lot of ways. It's interesting, too, that the governor would mandate several things that we already do. So that's a real positive. Very serious topic, putting a lot of energy into it. We're taking questions, or y'all have questions for us?
Yes, sir. I just have a couple of quick comments, and then I'm sure we'll have some additional questions and comments from our board team as well. You indicated on one of the charts, one of the strategies Governor Abbott has provided is the T-Chat through the Texas Tech Health Science Center. And I know we've received some inquiries lately about T-Chat and Care Solace. So just for our audience, T-Chat and Care Solace work, it's both are an overlay. So SAISD utilizes the T-Chat system through the Texas Health Science Center, and it is for the child health care access through telemedicine is the chat piece of that. So we have that, and that is for students in SAISD. The Care Solace is for students and employees and immediate families. So we felt that we wanted to utilize both of these kind of mental health care and personal wellness support systems in our school district. So we do utilize the T-Chat system from the Texas Tech Health Sciences Center. And again, we have the overlay that touches employees also with our Care Solace. I also just want to commend both of you. I know you've also along with going to all of our campuses and departments, that you've been asked by many community organizations and groups to provide this same presentation. So I appreciate you building some of those community connections, also letting them know all of our attempts to keep our schools safer. So thank you.
Dr. Detloff, I'll just add, in addition to Care Solace, it's also available for the immediate family members of students and of staff.
Any other questions, board team?
Yeah, you mentioned the door locks. Do all the classrooms, they all do have door locks on the classrooms?
Correct.
Classroom doors, right?
Yes, and you have to have a key entry to get into every classroom door.
Okay, and then y'all do make checks around the campus perimeters, like just fences and all that, make sure that no one's put anything where people can climb over or anything like that, right?
Yes, and we're going to actually have, like Mr. Kallenbach said, we're going to utilize our SROs as well, the police
Okay.
officers, on a daily basis. They'll be at the campuses making those checks as well, whether they're on patrol or whether they're working with the district.
Okay, and then you, on your, you said the substitutes also get this? And they're all trained on it as well?
Correct. Now, that's
Okay.
the parent guide. Our guide actually has a little bit more, here's what the students do, here's what the teachers do in those situations. It's all available on the I Love You Guys Foundation website. It's open to the public. You can look at it on that, but that's a quick little reference for parents on why we do what we do and how it works. But yes, it's every employee, including substitutes, are trained.
Okay, thank you.
And Jason, sorry, I know that a lot of this is coming up because of the Uvalde shooting last spring, but even prior to that, we were doing drills with combined police, sheriff's departments, active drills on our campuses as early as 4 years ago, I think.
Correct.
And
So
then-
it's kind of twofold. When we do our fire drills and all their other drills, we ask the officers that are working for the district at the time to go over there. We have to schedule those drills out, and we did that. We've been doing that for years, and so officers would go there just to help watch the kids and make sure things were going on that side. But we've been working with the SAPD and their SWAT team over the summers to allow them to go through the classrooms, get an idea of what the campuses look like, and actually do trainings on that. And then we've done the active shooter several years ago at a campus.
Sorry, a couple other things. It is true that San Angelo Police Department can still access our cameras if that was ever necessary easily.
Yes, they have access to our camera feeds if they need them.
Same with radios.
Yes.
Thank you.
I have a couple quick questions. And I'm sorry, I was taking notes and I may have missed a piece, but you had said that all doors were locked at all times that went out to the street. Does that include the initial door coming into the school, or does the vestibule keep that?
So that was one question we did have, and they mentioned that if you have a vestibule that is locked, your front door can be open.
Okay, awesome, thank you. And then my other question, and this is really just kind of a confirmation that I wanted to make publicly. I've seen and heard a lot of people concerned about those fences because they think that the kids are locked in. So I just wanted to confirm that kids are able to push out to get out of those fences, the gates on those fences if they needed to. Is that correct?
There are some fences that have crash bars, which we call a push bar that you can get out to. Not all fences have that.
Okay.
We do have several places around the perimeter that have gates.
Okay.
Most of them are locked with a padlock. Every teacher has a key to that padlock
Okay,
if needed.
awesome. Thank you very much.
Do our substitutes have keys for all those things as well when they come onto a campus?
That is something that we are working on based on the mandate that we have, that they have access to those for that day, yes.
That would be their classroom as well as those outside locks.
Exterior doors, gate locks, and classroom.
Thank you.
Dr. Skelton and Mr. Kalmbach, we appreciate all the work that you guys have been doing and your staff, and I know it's been a major effort, not just for you, but we've had many others that work for SAISD and the whole community. This is a very difficult situation, and I'm just glad to hear you say that this is something we have to really work on to not let our guard down.